What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Definitely appreciate the support. I wanted to go ahead and drop a video series getting into match coverage. Now, I usually do this every year towards the beginning of the year, of the Madden year, I guess you can say, going into match coverage so people can kind of glean some nitbits about how it works and etc. in the game. I didn't do it this year, and it's because I didn't necessarily think that it was critical to drop a video on match coverage. But, as the year went on, I thought, it's probably best that I do drop a series on quarters and the different variants of it. So if, for those of you who are a little bit confused on the coverage, you can kind of, refresh your memory on it. Or for those who want to learn more about it, at least I have, a video that I can point you to every year. So I believe I'm going to do this every year at the beginning of the year, go over each and every coverage and how it distributes routes on the back end in Madden. So obviously Madden 24, I'll be doing this again with quarters, palms, and all the different variants. But let's go ahead and go into quarters for this year. So this is quarters coverage. Obviously it says cover 4 quarters, and you have to turn match on. If you don't turn match on, then they just spot drop, and that's what we don't want if we want to match. Okay, so we are in cover 4 quarters, and the base you need to kind of understand is the numbering system when it comes to football. So with the offense, you just split right down the center, and then we count from left to right from the sidelines, and you number the receivers. Okay, so this is the 1, this is the 2, and the running back is the 3. And then the center is kind of like a 0 point, and then we can go from the outside in again on this side. This is the 1, and this is the 2. Everything's based upon this numbering system when it comes to distributing routes. Okay, so we are in quarters defense, and you guys know the play art for how it looks pre-snap, but you should know that it doesn't play the way it looks with the pre-snap play art. Okay, it should look like this. Okay, so I know this may look a little bit confusing for those who may be new to this. However, if you just take it one step at a time, it becomes almost like second nature to know who's responsible for what when you call this coverage and etc. And it does change a little bit against different formations, but if you get the base understanding of it against a 2x2 set, there's a reason why I went to this set first to go over it, then it's easier to translate your understanding across multiple different formations. Okay, so why don't we erase all of this, and then we'll start with the corner over here. So the corner, his responsibility is he's really what I believe they call mod. So MOD, I've heard of different names for this acronym. I've heard of man on demand, and I've heard of man on deep. Okay, but the easiest way for me to see the big picture of quarters coverage is he's really reading 1 to 2. That's why that numbering system is extremely important to drill in your head when you play the game. Okay, 1 to 2 to 3, and then you got 1 to 2 on this side. You just, after a while, it'll become almost like subconscious. You're not even thinking about it. When you come out as a defense, the numbering system just runs across your head, and you know who's got who, right? This corner is reading 1 to 2. If one runs a route designated as deep, then he mans him up man to man, and that's the end of the process. Okay, and they designate that cutoff at anything at 10 yards and above in Madden, I believe. Okay, so if this guy were to run a deep in pattern, a deep out pattern, a go pattern, a fade, then this corner will just man that up man to man. Now on the flip side of that, if this wide receiver were to run something underneath, like an in pattern, a drag pattern, etc., well then remember the process. He's reading 1 to 2. So then he will get his eyes on 2 to see if this player is running something deep that he can help out on, like a corner route or a deep out. And then he will man that route man to man. So why don't we take a look at this? All right, outside left corner, receiver runs up. Okay, he's man to man, he has him. Okay, reading 1 to 2. Now we flip it. He's reading the number 1 here. Remember, he's reading 1 to 2. If 1 goes deep, then I have him. Now when 1 runs something underneath like this, now he gets his eyes on the number 2 here. Okay, and he zones out to his quarter, and he's able to man to man a deep outside breaking route by this receiver. So why was that guy double teamed with the safety? Let's take a look at the safety now. Okay, so now we know what the corner is doing in a doubles formation like this. He's reading 1 to 2. It's the easiest way to see it. Now the safety, he's really reading Q to 2 to 1, okay? But to make things easier, we're just going to knock out the Q, and it's just 2 to 1, okay? So it's the same ordeal. If 2 runs anything deep, anything past 10 yards, then he mans the route man to man, okay? So why don't we take a look at that really quickly. So we're the safety, we are reading 2 to 1, 2 goes deep, so he takes him man to man. He converts into man-to-man coverage on the number 2. Now on the flip side of this, if the number 2 runs anything underneath 10 yards and it's not designated as deep, so he runs like a slant or a flat like in this case, then remember he's reading 2 to 1. So now he gets his eyes on number 1, and if 1 takes an inside release, then he's looking to rob a inside breaking route by the number 1. Okay, so if he runs like a post, a dig, or a curl, he's running a post here. As you can see, he's playing inside to help out his corner on that route. So, I mean, looking at a route combination like this on this side of the field, okay, right away, without even going through the play, it could be your first time running this play, you can select this play and you can know, hey, I'm playing quarters on this side, I know what should happen. Your corner's reading 1 to 2, and since 1 stays underneath, the number 1 should bracket the 2, which is the corner route. The safety's reading 2 to 1, and 2's running deep, so the safety's going to man-to-man on that route. Okay, so after a while, it just becomes kind of like second nature to kind of know how routes will be distributed when you understand the rules and regulations of quarters coverage. So we understand the corner, he's reading 1 to 2. We understand the safety, he's 2 to 1. Okay, so what about the quarter flat player? Well, the quarter flat player is a match to out player. Okay, so basically what that means is now one thing you got to keep in mind, this is very important. The safety and the quarter flat player are both run fit defenders. Okay, that's very important, and it'll come into fruition later. The quarter flat player will match the number 2 if he runs out. Okay, if he runs a flat, if he runs a speed out, okay, then the quarter flat player is going to take him man to man. Now if he were to run to like a wheel pattern where he goes to the flat and then he wheels it up upfield, it doesn't matter. Once he goes out at all underneath, then he's yours. You've bought the route, you have to man him up and take him all the way. So why don't we take a look at this really quickly. Alright, so we are the quarter flat player here. We know our assignment. We're involved in the run fit. If it's not a run, then we are a match 2 player if he goes out. 2 goes out, so that is our assignment, man to man. Now what happens if this player decides to go in, the number 2 player? Okay, and this is why in the original print, I actually had the quarter flat designated as reading 2 to 3, okay? And we'll see why here. Okay, so what he's going to do is he's going to squeeze on the route as he goes inside, and we'll watch it here. And then he will be cognizant of 3 leaking out into the flat. Okay, and there's a reason for this. You know, all of it makes sense. He's reading number 2. 2 doesn't go out. 2 decides to go in. So what I'll do is I'll squeeze on the route, but I'm cognizant and being aware of the number 3 leaking out to the flat. The reason why is if you do relative, he's the 1, he's the 2, he's the 3, but once these 2 players intersect, if you do it again, well, this player is the 1, and now he's the new number 2, and he's the new number 3. Okay, the numbers are really relative as the play transpires. Okay. So there's really only out, up, and in. What if he goes in and the back doesn't come out? Well, in that situation, then he just zones out to his curl. So again, he can squeeze on this route going inside. He's cognizant for 3 coming out, but since 3, the running back, doesn't leak to the flat, now he can play the curl. So we went over if the number 2 goes in or out, but what if that player goes vertical? Okay. In that particular instance, remember the rules. The safety is reading 2 to 1, so we know the safety will take him man to man. But we don't want our receiver, the number 2, to go scot-free at the safety and run like a deep post or a deep go without some type of help underneath. And that's where the quarter flat fits in. Okay? If that player goes vertical, then he is supposed to reroute that receiver. Get your hands on him, don't allow him to get a free release. If he gets a free release, then your safety, you're leaving him out to dry. Okay, so if this player goes out, you match the 2 out. If he goes in, then you squeeze on the route and you're cognizant of the number 3 leaking out into the flat. If the 3 doesn't leak out into the flat in that instance, then he just zones out to the curl. Okay, and if the number 2 goes vertical, well, then you reroute that receiver and then you can zone out afterwards. Okay, so why don't we go back to the screenshot. So the last one we got to learn is just the 3 receiver hook player. Okay, and he's really kind of the easiest one to get down. He's just relating to the number 3. Okay, so why don't we take a look at something. All right, so the running back runs directly at him, so he relates to the number 3, so that's his guy. As we see here, he runs with him. So now we can take a look. Here's the number 3. The 3 receiver hook, he's reading the number 3, and the number 3 runs a Texas route. So again, he just takes him man to man. Now if we change that to where he runs directly up and curls it back towards the quarterback, obviously he's the number 3, so the 3 receiver hook player takes him. Now in an instance like this, hopefully you saw it, where the running back is running to the flat to the right and the tight end is running left. Notice how he takes the tight end as opposed to the running back, and that's because, as we stated earlier, the tight end becomes the new number 3 because both of these players cross paths and intersected. Okay, again, it's all about the numbering system relative to where you are on the field. It's not locked pre-snap. You're not the number 2 the entire passing play. It may change based upon the routes. Okay. All right, so we learned what the corner, safety, quarter flat, and the 3 receiver hook. We learned their assignments and rules and etc. Now we need to learn the other 3. Well, we've already learned it. Okay. The quarters defense is a split safety defense, so that's why I have this red line down the center. And a split safety structure defense, basically what that entails is that this side of the defense is completely independent of this side of the defense. More on that later, probably in other videos. But when we play quarters, we're playing the same style defense on this side as we are on this side. Okay, so we've already learned the entire defense. This safety is reading Q to 2 to 1. Well, that's the same exact thing that this safety is doing on this side. Okay, the match 2 out player, your quarter flat player on this side, he's doing the exact same thing on this side of the defense. He's still reading the 2 and he's matching 2 out to the flat, and the same rules apply if he goes inside. He's cognizant of 3 leaking out to the flat, etc. And then the corner is obviously the same thing as well. So now you know the entire defense, what everyone's supposed to do, everyone's rules and assignments when you deal with a 2x2 set with the back in the backfield. Okay, now this is why I think this is probably the formation I think everyone should learn first when it comes to quarters defense, because when we transition into dealing with trips formations and other formations, some of the same rules applies. It just shifts over to different players. But because you kind of understand the base foundation rules of this formation, it'll be just easier to kind of understand it. So I believe I'll leave it at that. Maybe in another video I'll go over weaknesses of this, what a team may do to attack this, and then obviously I'm going to make videos on trips and other formations, and then we can kind of move forward from there. All right, man, peace.